Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have ourselves a little bit of a prehistoric, yet still at the same time, a modern day animal to take a look at, because we are lucky enough to have yet another of these grab-and-go figures from Rebor, as they are probably, in my opinion, some of the coolest figures that are out when it comes to Rebor overall. Like, I just love their grab-and-go line. They always look so lifelike and realistic, but also they're huge. They're absolutely massive. And there's no difference when it comes to this one, because this is the Rebor Grab and Go American Alligator. This is Bizkit, as it's been called when it comes to the name for this. But it's also the Baskin version. However, you might be thinking, well, Andy, don't you normally get every version, because there are two different paint variants for this? And you would be correct, because here is the other one. It's just that it's so stinking big, or they're both so stinking big, that they're hard to get into the screen at the same time here. So we'll just try to position that one over there. This one here is the Downpour version. So we have a very dry version, obviously would be the Basking version. Then we've also got the Downpour version, which would be the one here that's kind of back a little bit. And this one, actually, I should just say closer to the screen. And this one has a nice satin shine to it, looking very wet. So you could look at this as an alligator walking in the rain, or it's an alligator that maybe just came out of the water and is very wet. So I really like that. Definitely a very cool idea on the part of Rebor. I think it was quite nice of them to give us kind of the wet look version as well as the dry version, as well as two different paint variants overall, because as you can see, even though they look pretty similar, they're very different tones and different styles to the paint application of both. But they absolutely 100% look like living, breathing alligators here before me, as they usually do when it comes to Rebor. But honestly, I can't stress enough how impressive these look here at first glance. So let's go ahead and jump to a closer look at both of these right now. So we will begin with the Downpour version, again the kind of wet, sort of satin shine version. And when you take a look at this, you cannot possibly look at this head sculpt and tell me that does not look like a 100% living, breathing alligator. Like, this is honestly insane how good the sculpt and paint job is on this thing. It looks so lifelike. I almost worry having my hand so close to the mouth, because if it decides to snap, I'm in trouble. But you can see again, when you get nice and close, that sculpt work is phenomenal. There is so much going on when it comes to the skin texture of this alligator, and you can see they've done a great job of applying a nice dark wash so that it pops all of that detail in perfect realistic fashion. On top of that, you have this nice kind of a light tone here, like a light, I don't know what I'd say, maybe like a light brownish sort of a tone. And as you move up here, you can see the transition up is really smooth to this black coloration that we have for the upper side of the alligator. As you move through that area of the head, you can see the nostrils up here are sculpted very nicely. You can also see all of the skin texture is sculpted really nicely. It might be a little hard to pick up on how nice, just because, again, it does have that satin shine to it, which is sort of shining the detail away with the light hitting it, but I can assure you in person that detail looks amazing. As you lead up here to the eye, you can see a little bit of like a lighter grayish tone circling around the eye. You can also see a nice gloss coat for that eye painted with a black, and again, looking as realistic as it gets. It honestly looks like it's watching me. As you move down here, the mouth is sculpted in a closed position, and when it comes to the Rebor grab and go figures, there's never any articulation on these, so you can very clearly see the mouth is staying closed, and you can see the teeth obviously here are kind of hanging out on the outside of the mouth as far as the teeth on the upper jaw. They're all sculpted very nicely, sculpted individually, and they're also painted quite nicely. As you move back a little bit further into the body, one thing that I noticed that I do really quite like is the fact that you can kind of see like some variations of browns in between the cracks and crevices of the skin on this version. So showing that there is quite a bit of depth to the paint of this. It's not like they just hammered out this tone on the underside, this tone on the upper side, and then threw a wash over it and called it a day, and then I guess sprayed it with a little bit of a satin gloss coat sort of look. But you can see again that they've also added other variations of color to make sure that it looks as lifelike as possible. Of course, moving through the course of the body, you can see again the skin texture is honestly mind-blowing. There's just so much going on when it comes to the scale detail and fine detail, all sorts of variation to the different sizes of scales moving through. And then as you lead down here into the throat, you can see some nice bulkiness here to the throat of the alligator. And again, you can see how nice that dark wash is making all of that detail pop. As you move back here, you can see the leg here is obviously in mid-step as our alligator is walking along. As you lead down, you can see very large scaling that decreases in size the closer you get to the foot. Obviously, the toes are planted here when it comes to the front toes. The rear toes there are kind of lifting up off of the ground. As you can see, again, this foot is just about to pick up off of the ground, or actually I should say in the process of doing so. You can see the nails are also nicely painted, and of course have a bit of a shine because the entire body really does. As you continue to move along here, you can see some nice light yellow striping that shows up right here, and then as you move down here to the underside, you can see some black striping here moving along through the course of that, yellowish brown that we have for the underside. You can also see that the undersides of the feet sport that yellowish brown coloration that we have for the large portion of the underside of our alligator. And if you look here, you can see little bits of variations of browns poking up, similar to what we see up here. You can see in the side of the stomach as well. And of course, you'll see more of that as you move up here into the back, and you see all of those large scales here moving along the back. In between those scales, you can see that, brownish tone, again, just like we had seen up there in the neck. Man, that is so unbelievably impressive. As you move back here and you lead down the course of the back leg, you can see some nice muscle definition in that leg. Also, again, quite a bit of variation to the scale detail. And then you move down into the foot, you can see the toes look great. The paintwork again shows that kind of brownish tone showing up in between the black scales here. And you can also see, again, the nails are painted and definitely sport a nice gloss coat to them. And then as you move back up into the tail, this is that one area on the figure where you are going to notice a seam because these things are so huge. The tail does come disconnected, and I would absolutely recommend using either hot water or a hair dryer to connect the tail. If you try to just shove that tail in there, you are going to be in for a very long day because it's not going to go. I had to use a hair dryer. And if you do actually get this figure and you use a hair dryer, wait till you hear the wonderful whistling noise that you're going to hear as the hair dryer blows into the open area of the tail, because it does do quite the nice little whistle. But as you move back again, that seam is there. It's not super obvious, I don't think, but obviously it's something I wanted to mention because, again, you do have to connect the tail. But as you move back here into the tail of the alligator, you see another little bit of like a light yellowish striping showing up here as you move through the course of the tail. And obviously the tail leads up here. These sort of scoot-like scales become a bit larger on the upper side of the tail and then lead back from the 2 rows into the 1 row, exactly as you would see on the tail of a living, breathing alligator, which is exactly what this looks like. The tail's pretty straight out, but you can see a slight curve there at the end of the tail. And if we take a look at the opposing side, of course, everything's going to look pretty close to what we had just seen because for the most part, the alligator isn't in any sort of like a different position. It might have like a slight, very slight right turn to the head. But for the most part, everything again looks the same on this side as you move along until you get to the legs. Obviously, the legs are positioned differently. You can see this leg is leading on this side, whereas the other leg is trailing. But then again, that also means that as you move back, your leg is going to be trailing on this side because the leg on the other side is leading. So this, again, of course, correlates with the walking movement that we have for our alligator, exactly as you would expect to see. But the fact that the legs are kind of spread further apart gives us a little bit of a better view of the stomach over here on this side and all of the detail and paintwork contained within. It really shows, again, just how unbelievably impressive this figure is. And then, of course, you lead out into the tail, and that looks pretty much the same, but you can see as we lead down to the underside of the tail, again, the transition between colors is incredibly smooth, and you also have this little area here where we kind of darken the coloration of the tail moving along, as well as, again, a cloaca present here on the underside, but everything detail-wise, paint-wise, moving through is absolutely incredible on the underside of this alligator. Then we've also got the Baskin version. Now, one thing about this figure is when I had originally seen the prototype images, I thought that this would be the weaker of the two. I just didn't think that the coloration looked as nice as the other one. But in hand, I honestly feel very different about that because I think it looks absolutely incredible. And the fact that it doesn't have that satin shine, which obviously does look nice on the other figure, but the fact that it's excluding that, I think helps to appreciate the paint application a little more because you could just see it a little nicer. And the same deal for the sculpt. And again, you know, the sculpt is going to be the same on this one as it was on the other one, so we don't need to go over the sculpt twice. But when it comes to the paint apps on this one thing I noticed straight away, you'll see up here on the top of the snout, or hopefully you can, is the fact that we again have a nice light brown sort of creeping in and out of all of the scales, and then a grayish tone over top. So they've done a great job of applying the paint application in a way where it looks as realistic and natural as it could possibly get. You can also see, just like with the other one, we have a lighter tone sort of painted around the eye, and then the eye is painted with a black and sports a nice gloss coat. And you can also see a little bit of that lighter tone kind of running back here along the head. And then as you move down here into the side of the jaw, you can see that we have a nice brownish tone following basically along the jaw. You can kind of see it on the lower jaw as well. But then we return back to that darker gray as you move down, and then transition to sort of a yellowish brown on the underside. But again, really nice natural transition down. And just like with the other, you can see we have that nice dark wash present on the underside, which absolutely makes this look as realistic and lifelike as it could possibly get. So overall, the face looks great when it comes to the paintwork. Same deal for the teeth, just like the other one. They're all painted very nice and carefully. Very well done. As you move back here into the body, you continue to see again that nice grayish tone, and it seems as though we've also got a nice dry brushing over top of a lot of the scales to make all of that pop beautifully. But you can see that brown again kind of creeping in and out of all of the scales. It's maybe not quite as noticeable, I think, as we had seen on the snout there, or even on the other one again with the Downpour version in this area, but it's just so subtle. It looks really nice, really natural overall. Again, right here, like specifically, you can see how nice it looks when it comes to highlighting those scales. But as you move down here into the underside of the alligator, again, you can see the nice yellowish brown, and we have pretty similar to the same sort of look as you move back, because you also, again, have those sort of yellowish stripes moving through, and then you've also got the dark gray sort of striping down here on the underside. You can see, as well as a nice little area of like a different shade of brown kind of moving along here, just a slightly different shade, similar to the shade that we actually see right here in the jawline. But again, it looks really good, really natural. Moving down into the leg, you can see again, we've got the nails painted. The brown again continues to shine through the gray when it comes to highlighting the detail, and the nails do have a nice satin shine to them, helping to make those look very realistic as well. And you can see that we've got that yellowish brown moving along the underside and moving up the back of the leg. And then again, the same thing back here. You're going to see exactly the same sort of paintwork as you move through. Man, I just cannot get over how realistic this alligator looks. It looks so lifelike. You can really see the nice brownish sort of, I guess it's a wash maybe that they've applied here on the foot. It really shines in that area. But then as you move back up into the tail, you've got a few more yellow spots moving out. That's probably the only area on the figure that I can say doesn't look super smooth, like specifically that one is a little bit sloppy. And the paint doesn't look super nice here in this area when it comes to that little spotting moving through. I think it looks a little more like paint over body color, whereas the rest of the figure, for the most part, I think looks like really nice naturalistic body color. But I don't think that takes away from it, very much. It overall still looks really good. And then again, same deal for the underside. You can see it's pretty much the same style, same patterning and everything as the other one, just slightly different tones of color. And then again, the same thing as you move up here on the other side of the tail. I think these spots actually look a little bit better on this side, except for this one. For some reason, the first one always looks a little iffy, but you can see the seam again where the tail was connected. But overall, again, it's going to look pretty much the same over here as it did, just like we had seen on the initial side. But honestly, both of these are so incredible in person. It's actually hard to tell you guys. You really just need to order these and see them for yourself. Now, when it comes to a size on these alligators, they're pretty darn big. So if we go ahead and push this up as far as possible, so we've got the tail in screen. For a length from the snout to the tail, you're looking at about, I'd say about 24.5 inches, or right around 62 centimeters. So obviously you can tell it's a very, very large model. The highest point would probably be the back. and that's right around 4.5 inches, or about 11.5, I would say, centimeters, maybe just shy of that point as I smack the camera with the tape measurer. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex back there behind the alligator, as well as the Attack Pack Colovosaurus Robert Muldoon and the Collect A human being here in the front. And obviously it is this point, I think, of the review where you can really see how massive these are and how very clearly not much is going to size up well next to these, because without a doubt these are the largest alligator figures that I have. We've also got a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus stepping in here again to show you that this alligator is absolutely gigantic. And now this is the point where I think you might become most impressed with the size of this alligator, because this is the Rebor Dinosaur here next to the Rebor Grab and Go Alligator, and that is ridiculously huge, because the Rebor Dinosaur is actually a very large model, and to see how badly it's dwarfed by this alligator, I think, is just going to probably show you that these are impressive on another level. And the same can absolutely be said for our final comparison, because we have the Rebor Sarcosuchus next to our alligator, which again is drastically dwarfed here, showing you overall how crazy large these grab-and-go alligators are. So I can tell you straight away with 100% confidence that these are the best alligator models in my collection. And I would actually go even further than that and say that they're probably the best alligator models on the market anywhere right now, and probably the closest you can get to actually owning a living, breathing alligator without owning a living, breathing alligator. Both are phenomenal when it comes to the sculpts. I love everything about the sculpts of both. The fine detail is so crisp, it's so impressive on the sculpt, pops in the best way possible, and absolutely looks exactly as it does on an alligator, and looks like a living, breathing alligator here in person. The actual fine detail shows off the movement perfectly as well, and I actually really quite like the pose for it. I love the walking pose. It just looks really nice and natural, and at the same time kind of gives us a little bit of life and action to the alligator, which is also a massive plus. You also have really nice paintwork again, and two different paint variants to choose from, so if you want one over the other, or you're like me and you want both, you're going to have two really beautiful paint jobs, because no matter which one you choose, I think they both look great. And honestly, I'd be pretty much stumped if you were to ask me which one I like over the other. I don't think I could choose. Normally I can, but in this case I really don't see me being able to pick one over the other, because both have their advantages and both look great. Again, very nice natural paint, very smooth application of the paint. The only area on any of them that I think looks a little bit iffy as far as the paintwork goes would be the spots on the Baskin version's tail. That's really about it. Outside of that, I think the paintwork looks extremely realistic and lifelike, and they've done a great job of adding in various tones of color. Again, applying nice washes like the brownish wash as well as the dark wash on the underside. And everything on this, again, comes together to give us probably the most realistic and impressive alligator model that I have ever seen and probably will ever see. So if you are interested in picking one of or both of these up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to exactly where you can do that on Big Bad Toy Store. So make sure you check that link, go grab these amazing alligators, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.